And again, there's no exact timetable on when Joe Burrow is going to come back. Several weeks is all we really got out of Zach Taylor. But nonetheless, is this concerning there at all? What his wide receiver had to say in Ja'Marr Chase?
Yeah, my eyebrow went up because Ja'Marr was the one who initially said the day of the injury, oh, yeah, Joe looked at me, he did a little wink, he did a little like wink, and he said he's good. So hearing Ja'Marr, his bestie, say like, oh, Joe was fine, you felt better. Based off of that video, watching it, you thought that the entire season was over. So now Ja'Marr is saying, well, I don't want to see him week 5, like, to rest up. Now you're thinking, okay, that's a little different. I do think this Bengals team would still be fine without Joe Burrow for 5 weeks. I think the important thing is him coming back at full strength. But I don't know, because Jamar's saying a lot of different things. Like, he'll be back soon, but Joe also doesn't know when he'll be back. Like, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what is happening with this Joe Burrow injury situation.
Yeah, for me, listen, when I listened to Ja'Marr Chase talking, it was apparent to me he's talking about, I need you towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Like, not disrespecting any of the opponents in the early part of the first month of the season, but more so that I need you 100% healthy and ready to go when it counts. Because one thing about these calf strains, these things can linger for a long period of time if you're not careful. And I think Ja'Marr Chase is looking at the long game rather than, short term trying to get him back as quickly as possible. So I've had a calf strain before. It's no joke. It takes time. And I think he just wants his quarterback to be completely healthy. So when he's out there, they're out there for the long haul.
I mean, this is the same quarterback, though, that had a catastrophic knee injury and then returned the very next season. He can be a complete freak when it comes to healing from injuries. That is for certain. I will say those first 4 weeks of the season, first 5, and who knows, this also could be the case of Ja'Marr Chase just kind of throwing week 5 out there, as opposed to week 3 or week 2 or whatever it may be. But the Browns week 1, I know it's the Browns, and especially lately they haven't. Yeah. But they've had the Bengals number. Joe Burrow himself has only beaten the Browns one time, and it came at the end of last season. So this is no gimme game, not for at least the 4 games of the season. It doesn't matter who they play.
But, in fairness, don't sleep on the Browns. That's actually the game I have, week 1, Browns-Bengals. But in fairness to the Bengals, by week 5 last year, they were 2-3. They started the season 0-2. They finished 12-4. So it can be done. It can be done. I don't love Joe Burrow missing any time, but if there's one quarterback I look at besides Patrick Mahomes and say, you know what, when he comes back fully healthy, I expect this team to roll, it's Joe.
Hey, Damian, did you like that Ja'Marr Chase said this, or did you think that it was maybe out of pocket for him to mention his quarterback's injury?
No, I didn't have a problem with it because I think he's just, he wants his guy to be right, when it counts the most. That's the biggest thing. It's like, don't come back sooner than you need to because we don't need you re-injuring yourself and then you missing significant portions of the season. So I think he's looking out for his guy.
Yeah, and look, this is a Bengals team that's familiar with the postseason now and familiar with each other, too. There's a lot of familiarity there across the board. Teams are on the right side of it, looking up. So who do you think is more likely to actually win a playoff game this season? Is it the Jets or the Lions, Courtney?
I think it's the Lions because their path is easier, considerably easier, because they don't have to play in the AFC East like the Jets, and they don't have to worry about Buffalo or Miami or where they fall in that pecking order. I've said this a bunch. They are the best team in the NFC North. They're going to win the NFC North, so that guarantees them at least one home playoff game in the postseason. Their path to getting there with an offense that finished as a top 5 unit. Jared Goff, 15 touchdowns, 0 interceptions over his final 10 games last year. I like what I saw, and I like the additions that they made on the defensive side of the ball. They might be, below a top 10 unit, somewhere between like 12 and 13 in defense this year, but they've certainly made investments there. If they can get a more consistent pass rush and stay healthy on that side of the ball, they'll be the most complete team in the division. And given their strength of schedule, now they open up with the Kansas City Chiefs, so don't expect them to win that game, but they're a team that down the stretch last year really made it interesting. Had it not been for that earlier window game, they would have been in the postseason. So they almost get there last year, they get there this year, and then they win a playoff game.
And that's what's so interesting about both these teams. They were both really close to making the postseason last year. So they're both right there. They're on the cusp of it. Who do you think wins a playoff game, Jets or Lions?
So, Shay, I actually was a beginner beat writer the last time the Jets were in the playoffs. That's how long it's been. But you know what? Unlike Damian Woody, I can show that I'm objective. People have said, yo, Kim, you've been too nice to the Jets. Well, you know what? The answer is the Lions, okay? The answer is going to be the Lions because I'm not picking the Jets this time. No, but I think Courtney hit on it. It really is an easier path. But more than that, it is the fact that we've seen it. The big question is, I think the Jets will win this division, right? But we still haven't seen it. We haven't seen Aaron Rodgers actually in a regular season game with these weapons, with this head coaching staff, with this coordinator in this city win games. What I saw last year was a Lions team that started 1-6, and you thought, okay, well, forget about the Lions. Like, they're not doing nothing. And guess what? That Lions team finished 8-2. Jared Goff, who was literally cast away by LA, sentenced to Detroit, like they thought they were sending him to Siberia, and Jared Goff was like, okay, bet. I can be that dude for this team. Like Dan Campbell, eating kneecaps all over the place. Everybody wrote him off like, okay, what is this guy talking about? Well, guess what? He assembled one of the best staffs in the NFL. And he had a team that had nothing to play for technically besides pride in that last regular season game, and they still beat the Packers. So I have seen it on paper. I have seen a team that went 5-1 in the division. So because of the division they play in and the conference, more importantly, I will say the Lions because I can pick somebody else besides the Jets.
Not only did they beat the Packers in that last game, they also embarrassed Aaron Rodgers. Damian Woody, what do you think? Jets or Lions? Who's going to win a playoff game?
What's Damian going to say?
I know y'all expecting me to be objective, but I'm not going to be objective.
We know exactly. There you go.
No, I'm going to listen. I'm going to pick the Jets. Listen, y'all made some fine points about the Lions, and actually, I do agree that the Lions. I think the Lions will win the NFC North this year, and they'll be hosting a home playoff game. But I'm going with the Jets. We're talking about just to give everyone an idea how inept the Jets were on offense last year. The last 6 games, the Jets scored 1 touchdown per game offensively. 1 touchdown per game and almost made the playoffs. Almost made the playoffs. The Jets they're going to come back this year. The Jets going to make an argument, have the best defense in the National Football League this year. The Lions can't make that statement, okay? The Lions statistically were one of the worst defenses in the league. Now, they improved as the year went on, but they still were a pretty bad defense. Now you're talking about a team in the Jets who had arguably the worst quarterback situation in the league, and they have Aaron Rodgers now? You go from the worst to one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League in Aaron Rodgers, combine that with the young weapons that they have littered all over the roster, a top defense. Yeah, I'll take the Jets on that one.
I would take the Jets too, just because I do feel like they're a little bit closer in terms of totality. Look, when we look at how good teams are, the barometer is usually the quarterback, the defense as a whole, maybe the wide receiving core. And when you look at the Jets, I feel like they're a little bit more complete in those 3 areas, right? And Jared Goff, while he has been, I think, impressive, I have heard Dan Campbell in the last 365 kind of come at his quarterback and say, I need more from him. I need more from him. We have yet to hear that, obviously, from the Jets and saying that to Aaron Rodgers, considering he won 2 MVPs before last season. And so, to me, I feel like this feels a little bit more like the Jets, but I agree with Courtney. I think the Lions are going to win the division in the NFC North.
Yeah.
And having a home playoff game in Detroit is huge.
It's huge. And when you take a look at the 7 teams that come out of the AFC and the NFC, are you automatically saying that 3 are going to come out of the AFC East? We automatically go in Miami, the Jets, and Buffalo? I mean, that's tough because then the AFC South is a low-hanging fruit. They'll get it just because they have 1 division winner, so that technically could open up a spot elsewhere unless the Tennessee Titans want to surprise us all and, get that over Jacksonville. I don't know. I just can't see 3 teams in this division, which is going to be the toughest division in football, making it into the playoffs, which then puts the Jets and it puts Miami in question for me. Their path is very difficult. I've got to point that out.
What do you think?
I don't know.
I think go ahead, Kimberly. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Courtney, don't even waste your time with all your little fancy stats and all your doings because Damian's literally just speaking from the heart. That's all. Because earlier in the show, Damian gave us the Ravens, the Bengals, the Jets, the Dolphins, the Browns, the Steelers, the Chargers. All these teams were the reason why we couldn't say the Chiefs. He picked the Chiefs to repeat because the AFC is so loaded. But now we're having a discussion about which team is more likely to win a playoff game. And he's saying the Jets, a team I covered Damian on, has an easier shot than the Lions. He's just speaking from, it's nostalgia. It's okay, it's love.
I will say, I know I took the Jets, guys, but Jared Goff has gone further in the postseason more recently than Aaron Rodgers has.
I mean,
He has 3 playoff wins. He's the only
Important Cowboy this upcoming season, not named Dak Prescott. Let's leave him out of this conversation.
Michael Parsons is a great choice. I'm going to throw a curveball. How about Tony Pollard? We saw last year what the difference between Zeke and Tony Pollard, the explosiveness. We know that Mike McCarthy wants to run the ball. Tony Pollard's a guy that can bring that explosive aspect in the running game. They really don't have another guy to pair with Tony Pollard. I think that speaks volumes to his importance, and it's going to be great to see him back healthy. But also in the passing game, his ability to make something out of nothing when Dak Prescott might not have anything down the field, and he can dump it off to a safety valve like Tony Pollard. He can still make explosive plays in the passing game, and also being creating mismatches in the passing game out of the backfield. I think those are critical aspects for the Dallas Cowboys offense. We talk about Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb, but Tony Pollard, man, is such a huge piece to that offense. If they didn't have him in the offense, I think that offense would really look different.
What do you think?
Damian, I am yet again so disappointed in you.
Yes, Kimberly, I know where you're going. I know.
Because Damian, you and I spent a very nice, quick half hour together on Get Up this morning, and we talked about the most important player on the Dallas Cowboys. And it isn't even Dak Prescott. Forget about Dak. And it certainly, sir, is not Tony Pollard. Because let me tell you, without my cousin Zach Martin, Tony Pollard ain't getting nowhere. He's not doing nothing. And right now, Zach Martin is not at Cowboys camp, and this pains me to see. It pains me to hear Jerry Jones talk about, when they show up, they'll show up, and that. This is madness to me, because this offensive line, Zach Martin is the most important player on this team. He's the most talented, and he's literally the 8th best paid offensive guard in the NFL based on average salary. This is wild to me. The market has been reshaped, and Zach Martin is sitting around. He could be fined $50,000 per day that he misses. He is the key. Without, we talk about this offense, Dak wants to say, it's going to be aggressive natured. It's going to be this. This offense, it's not going to be doing anything if your all decade team guard is not there.
The amount of money it would take to get him into camp, if you're Jerry Jones, you're splitting hairs here. That $6 million of dead money that you're sitting on right now for releasing Ezekiel Elliott, I'd like to see them try to work something out to give Zach Martin what he wants. But the money that Jerry Jones says he has to save for Micah Parsons is why he's the most important Cowboy, not named Dak Prescott to me. And I think in totality, he's not, you can't put him in a certain box. He led the league with 90 pressures last year, and he wasn't a true defensive end. You can line him up a bunch of different places. You can have him come off the edge. You can drop him into coverage. He is a dynastic. I know we've been on that word a little bit this morning. He's a dynastic sort of defender, and he's only going into his 3rd year after putting together 26 and a half sacks the last 2 seasons. Now, the reason I think he's the most important and he can determine how this whole thing goes is because he's been doing some different training techniques during the offseason. He wants to be Aaron Donald, but Aaron Donald on the edge. So I would worry just maybe a little bit that some of that weight training might come at a cost of speed. And his get-off is one of the most important things to that Dallas Cowboys pass rush. So hopefully they don't have to sacrifice any of that with his new training techniques, but he goes and the Dallas Cowboys defense goes with him. Dan Quinn being able to utilize him as a chess piece, because when teams see him coming after the quarterback, it changes things. They scheme for Micah Parsons in ways that they don't have to do for other defenders, and everything starts up front. As we know in Dallas, even with how good their secondary is.
Okay, let's be honest. All these players that we named will make an immediate impact on this Cowboys team in terms of them being better from jump. I'm actually going to go a completely different direction, and I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb. And I feel like that seems like the most underrated, silly response. But in terms of what we see in the National Football League with quarterbacks and their wide receivers or their pass catchers, because we could look at Travis Kelce too, right? And them being a really important piece of the puzzle in success, in the deep ball, in scoring points. We have yet to see that with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb because there's so many drops. CeeDee Lamb is tied for the most drops on this team, and he's your number one wide receiver. You simply just can't have it. You have Michael Gallup. Now you have Brandon Cooks coming over. You have a good wide receiver room. But Dak Prescott needs that number one go-to guy that they can constantly be sure that the one or the other is going to be on the same page so that they can go up with the likes of, and I'm going now to the NFC or to the AFC, but so they can go up against the likes of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase when that time comes. Or they can go up against Stephon Diggs, right, and Josh Allen. We don't see that with the Dallas Cowboys, and I feel like that's sometimes why we like to count them out.
That's fair. That is fair. I see that. But again, maybe because his last name's Martin, so I'm going to ride with him. I don't care. But I think for as great as Micah is, the struggles that we see, the thing that we point to with this Cowboys, I think the issues that we point to is the offense. And I think the questions surrounding Dak, I don't think we get the answers. I don't think CeeDee Lamb is getting the ball. I don't think Dak is feeling comfortable in the pocket, faced with that pressure, unless you have Zach Martin there and that offensive line. I think it starts in the trenches. Damian, you know this. It starts in the trenches, my guy. So really, if your offensive line doesn't have consistency, doesn't have chemistry, if there are any questions about it, as you know with your New York Jets, you're going to have issues on offense.
Another first-team All-Pro and MVP season for Patrick Mahomes, who just seems to make it look so easy. The Chiefs signal caller will try to become just the sixth player in NFL history with consecutive regular season MVPs. And so, Damian, as we bring you back in here, do you think Patrick Mahomes this upcoming season is going to be better, worse, or the same?
I actually think it's going to be better, and I know those are gaudy stats that you posted up there. But remember last year, the Kansas City Chiefs actually had some, had a situation during the year where, they were kind of working things out. Remember, you move on from Tyreek Hill. That was a huge component to their offense, in prior years, and they were still trying to figure out their identity and who they're going to be, especially with talent like Tyreek Hill. So I think last year, Patrick Mahomes and company was still working through things. Ultimately, finishing the season and which culminated in him winning the MVP and the Super Bowl. But I think a year removed from that, trying to figure out the whole Tyreek Hill thing, is actually going to make them even better because now they already know who they are as an offense. They got some pieces that guys that are a year, a guy like Scott Moore, who obviously was a rookie last year, who's going to be a year better. Isaiah Pacheco, the running back, he's a rookie last year who's going to be a year better. So they got guys, they were young guys that played prominent roles who should be a lot better this year. So I think the offense is obviously going to be similar, but another year removed from Tyreek Hill, I think Patrick Mahomes can be better than what he was last year.
Bishop. Let me, as your first lady, I always want us to be on the same page. I really do. But how is it that earlier in the show, when we talked about would we take the Chiefs or the field, you were quick to say, oh, no, I'm going to take the field. I'm going to take the field. And yet here you are, Bishop, telling me that Patrick Mahomes somehow will be better than he was last year, when in fact, Patrick, let me think, won the Super Bowl, 50 yards, and literally was the MVP, but you were telling me he's going to be better. If he is any better, then put your money on the Chiefs today, Bishop, because it makes make it make sense for the congregation, please. I'm trying to be, the first lady is trying to help you here.
Listen, Kimberly, first lady, this is what I'm saying here. I'm playing the odds here. As great as Patrick Mahomes is, and he's clearly the best quarterback we have in the league. There are a lot of really, really good teams in the AFC. That's all I was doing. You don't got to hate on me here, because I'm playing percentages with the other AFC teams. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to come at the Bishop that way.
Listen, if we are going to lead this congregation every week I want us to be. We need to be like this. We need to be a team. We need to make sense. We need to have all our points aligned. And I'm just looking. I'm just wondering where we went astray. That's all. That's all.
Well, Woody, I'm joining you.
Okay, I got you. I got you.
I'm Team Woody because I'm team percentages, I'm team numbers, and I look back at Patrick Mahomes' numbers from last year. Highest completion percentage of his career, led the NFL in total QBR, 45 touchdowns in the regular season, and the second highest passer rating. All of that last year led him to the MVP. And then what does he do in the postseason? He gets his team home field advantage, everything runs through Arrowhead, and then he gets injured and still leads them to an AFC championship. We found out from that quarterback series that ankle didn't heal until months after the Super Bowl. He did all that on a bum ankle last year and was able to win a Super Bowl MVP at that. If he did all of that without Tyreek Hill, with a mishmash group of wide receivers that ended up going wide receiver by committee. To Damian's point, they're going to have another year in this offense. Yes, Juju Smith-Schuster's gone, but
so is Mecole Hardman.
So is Mecole Hardman, but another year for MVS, another year for Kadarius Toney, really a full year for Kadarius Toney. Okay. Sky Moore in the mix as well. There's a reason they used a high draft pick on him. And oh, by the way, Andy Reid still is play caller, still going to be dialing up a whole lot that teams never expect. That's the one thing we've learned from this Kansas City offense, that you are always expecting the unexpected when Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. So can he up the ante? Yes, and it's scary that we put ourselves in that conversation, because it's like, how much better can he get when we saw how good he was last year in spite of some really, really difficult circumstances and a lot of doubt that this team could be as good as they were when Tyreek Hill was on it. We all sat at this desk and questioned that, and we all looked dumb after that, because he proved us wrong and he will prove us wrong again.
Here's what I know. None of us are going to pick worse, because we're just not going to do that with Patrick Mahomes. But also someone's name who's not been brought up yet is Eric Bieniemy. And him not being in Kansas City, we don't know how that's going to affect the offense. We don't know how that's going to affect Patrick Mahomes, but it has been a minute.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.